Hello, YouTube divers. This is WaterEye122, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. Today, we're going to keep going on these reviewing the Sonata Arctica classic albums, discography-ish. And we're going to be moving forward with their 2007 album, Unia, which is Finnish for Dreams. So this is the final album to feature Sonata Arctica's classic guitar player and Johnny Lee Matainen, and Elias Viljanen, their current guitar player, would join them on the following album, The Days of Grays. But we'll talk about that in the next episode. But with Unia, this was another one of those classic Sonata Arctica albums that I really wanted to like more. Especially considering that this is the very last album of Sonata Arctica's to feature Johnny Lee Matainen on the guitar. And, yeah. Did this album impress me? We'll find out. So the lineup of this record is the same one that was on Reckoning Night, the previous album. You still have Tony Kakko doing vocals, Johnny Lee Matainen on the guitars, Marco Pasikowski on the bass, Henrik Klickenberg on the keyboards, and Tommy Portimo on drums. Though Tony Kakko is credited with having some keyboard contributions throughout the record, but many of them are done by Mr. Henrik Klickenberg, so there's that. So this is one of the longer Sonata Arctica albums with 12 tracks, and a lot of them are in the 4 to 6 minute range. So yeah, we got a lot of material to talk about, so without further ado, let's get started. So the opening track is In Black and White, and honestly, I think this is one of the more average songs from the band. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout this video. There are a lot of average to below average tracks on this record. Yeah, we will get into that. But with In Black and White, it sounds very heavy and very, like, in your face. It gives me a lot of vibes from Night Wishes, Bye Bye Beautiful, and Master Passion Greed, both of which are really harsh and really mean sounding. Ironically, the albums that feature these tracks came out the same year, so there's that. But within Black and White, I do like some of the more heavier riffs on here, and I can at least applaud Sonata Arctica for trying something new here, which is going to be another recurring theme throughout the video. And then we get back-to-back great tracks with Paid in Full and For the Sake of Revenge. Paid in Full is actually another one of their more overplayed songs, and definitely one of their best songs from this era. This is another song that they keep playing live ever since. So, yeah, Paid in Full, great song. And then For the Sake of Revenge, admittedly, it can drag a little bit, and it can get boring, but, but for what it is, it's a great atmospheric, somber song from the band, which is going to be something that the band explores in future records. Then we have It Won't Fade, which is honestly one of my least favorite tracks on the record. It's not terrible, but like with In Black and White, I feel like it's just too harsh and too mean and way too overproduced for what it needs to be. It's not, I mean, it's probably worse, like, it's probably, more overproduced than some of the from some of my least favorite tracks from, like, the Winter Hearts Guild album. Because at least for the Winter Hearts Guild, they at least made it somewhat interesting. Like, it was too much, but it was never boring. But on this album, especially with tracks like It Won't Fade, it's overproduced and it's boring. So as a result, it affects its ranking here. But thankfully, we get another batch of back-to-back bangers with my favorite song, starting off with my favorite song on the Unia album, Under Your Tree. This is a very pretty and very atmospheric cut. Obviously, with the album translating to Dreams in the English language, it sort of makes sense. Like, this album definitely has a lot of dreamy, atmospheric vibes. And I think Sonata Arctica does a great job of capturing that atmosphere, especially on more gentle and more tame songs like Under Your Tree. I love Under Your Tree. Definitely one of my favorite songs from this era. And then we have another track on. Then we have another great song, Caleb, which continues the Caleb saga. Um, that features songs like Juliet on The Days of Grace, the end of this chapter, from Silence, Don't Say a Word from Reckoning Night, um, Till Death Done Us Part from The Ninth Hour, and The Last of the Lambs from Talvio. Caleb is the select song from here, and it basically dives into Caleb's backstory, what he was, how he grew up, and why he is the way he is. Very troubled past, but overall, Caleb, a great song. But again, like with For the Sake of Revenge, I feel like it can drag out and it can get boring at times, but it does just enough to stay in the great tier. I love Caleb. Then we get the first dud on this record. In my opinion, that is The Vice. I don't know what it is about this song, but I've never liked this song. This is definitely one of my least favorite songs from this classic era of Sonata Arctica, and maybe one of my least favorite songs the band has ever done. Maybe. I don't know. But it's definitely one of my least favorite songs from this classic period of the band, so yeah. Same cannot be said for the following song, My Dreams But a Drop of Fuel for a Nightmare. What a mouthful of a title that is. Like with Under Your Tree, this is a very somber and very melodic and very sweet song. I mainly prefer a lot of the softer moments on this record, as you could probably already, if you couldn't already tell. But My Dreams But a Drop for Fuel for a Nightmare is just a very atmospheric cut. It reminds me a lot of some of the more atmospheric cuts on Winterheart's Guild, or dare I say even Reckoning Night. But yeah, I really like this song. It's in the great tier. And then we have another dud, and that is The Harvest. This is way too harsh. This is way too harsh. Even for Sonata Arctica standards, it's just very overproduced. It's too boring. It's too angry and too mean. I don't really dig it here. It's another one of those tracks on this record that reminds me of Master Passion Greed from Nightwish. Just way too mean, way too harsh, and way too overproduced for what it needs to be. So, yeah. Then we have arguably the most boring track on this record, The World's Forgotten, The World's Forbidden. Um, it's a shorter song, too. It's a shorter song, but I barely remember anything from this track. It is just very forgettable and very average, if you ask me. Like, this track is really nothing special, in my opinion. And even though this is one of the softer songs on this record, there are better choices on this album, for sure. And The World's Forgotten, The World's Forbidden, not really one of my favorite tracks from the band. And then we have the last total dud from the record, and that is Fly with the Black Swan. Again, just like with The Harvest, and just like with The Vice, it is way too aggressive, it is way too over the top, it is way too overproduced for my liking. So it unfortunately has to fall into the dud category, but yeah, and this one was really disappointing as well, because I actually really wanted to like this song, Fly with the Black Swan. Because you got so many great power metal ideas up your sleeve with this song, but I don't know, they just turn it into like a mid 2000s alternative metalcore-esque song. I just don't really like it. And then, fortunately though, the album does end on a high note with Good Enough Is Good Enough, a beautiful piano-driven ballad which showcases Tony Kakko's amazing soulful ballad-like singing and Henrik Klickenberg's beautiful classical piano playing skills. This is another one of my favorite tracks on the record, and yeah, I love Good Enough Is Good Enough, and it's a really sad song too. Catch it on any given day, and it might make you cry. just like Shaman Delay from Reckoning Night. So overall, this record is a mixed bag for me. I feel like this is a transitional record from the band as they're leading further away from the power metal stuff that made them famous, and they're now transferring into the more progressive, alternative-esque metal that they would do from the days of, from this album all the way up to Talvio, um, in my opinion at least. Um, and as a result, a lot of the tracks on here just don't really feel like Sonata Arctica, though I will say that in future records they definitely do this style a lot better. But here I see it as like some sort of experiment. It didn't work right away. And as a result, this is probably this is definitely my least favorite album from the classic era of the band, meaning their first 6 albums. Um, and it's really jarring coming right off the heels of Reckoning Night into Unia, which is like the amazingly epic and great storytelling of Ecliptica and Silence and Winterheart's Guild, and then Reckoning Night, and now into this more sludgier, more aggressive, and more in-your-face version of the band with Unia. This, I will say though, I think on the Days of Grays it does, and like these techniques definitely improve, but I will talk further about that in the Days of Grays review. Um, but yeah, overall, Unia, I think this is a fairly average album. I'm gonna rate it a 7 out of 10. I definitely think there are some good things about it, like those softer songs, like with For the Sake of Revenge, Paid in Full, Under Your Tree, especially Caleb, My Dream's But a Drop of Fuel for a Nightmare, and Good Enough is Good Enough, but everything else just ranges from mediocre to below average to just being bad songs altogether. I am very tempted to say that this is now one of my least favorite Sonata Arctica albums in general. I don't know. You'll just have to wait and see on the re-ranking. But overall, Unia, not a terrible album, but not a great album by any means. Definitely the lowest point in their classic era, and it's really a shame that Johnny Lee Matainen had to go out this way. I think he could have been a lot better on here. He does bang out a lot of heavy riffs, but there's no shreddy. There's not a lot of shreddy solos. There's not a lot of interesting stuff going on in his department. And Tony Kako is, in my opinion, I think he regresses a little bit on this record. I mean, it's understandable because with those previous 4 records, he was really going for it. But on here, he kind of takes it a step back. There are glimpses of his more classic voice when he's getting up there in the high range, but this is really the beginning um, of the end for Tony Kako's high-pitched, soaring voice. He's more into his more deeper, lower, mid-range voice on here, which is fine. I mean, it works, but it's not going to please a grand majority of Sonata Arctica fans. But the MVP of this album is definitely Henrik Klickenberg, who just continues to prove that he was the perfect fit behind the keys for this band. I love his work on this record, especially with his Hammond organ stuff, his classical piano stuff, and his synthesizer stuff. Everything he does on this record is just amazing, but overall, 7 out of 10, average album, least favorite from this era. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive122 signing out, ready to dive and more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.